Asian men are in a tricky place in society, right? Because growing up, I feel like all the role models, like all the most successful actors are all usually white men, right? So I just never felt like I was like good enough. So I dated like a lot of white women growing up, right? But I had so many insecurities around like the sex part, like portion of it, because of like
stereotypes.
Yeah. So I had so many chances. Like they're like, hey, like let's have a threesome. Like basically all these opportunities, but I botched all of it because I was so insecure. And looking back at it, I'm like so many regrets.
Being unfaithful. Like my father is showing me examples of all this kind of stuff. Like so to me, everything I'm seeing and everything that I'm doing wrong is accepted in society, or it's not new. I'm not alone in doing this. So I felt validated in order to be toxic, but. When I started to look at myself and be like, okay, this is the way that all this bullshit is manifesting in my life. I'm unhappy, right? Like I can barely sleep. Like I feel very shitty about myself all the time. Like I do not like how I look. I do not like how I sound. I don't like anything about me right now.
Like, but that'd be cool. Like I can't wait to get to a stage where like I have a big enough following that I'm streaming and then like interact with like real live people.
Yeah, people don't care about me enough yet for me to do that. But
we'll get there.
One day. Yes, yeah. Exactly. We're all gonna get there. All right, yeah, man. Just I want you to tell the people who you are quickly. You know the things you're trying to do.
Yeah, so I'm Davidson Hang. My background is I used to work at LinkedIn, Fortune Magazine, Udemy, a lot of like e-learning courses. Been in sales my whole life. Started a men's group, published 4 books. I have the 5th one coming out this year. Redefining Masculinity was the most, unapologetically ENFP, which is one of the Myers-Briggs type assessors, was the last book. So really into a lot of the assessments.
Are you your ENFP?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And the next book is called, Don't Put Me in a Box, Adventures of a People-Pleasing Contrarian.
Ah, very cool. Wow, I've always actually wanted to write a book myself, actually. I'm an ENFJ.
Ah, I knew we were similar.
Yeah.
ENFJ. That's cool.
What does the P stand for again?
Perception.
Perception, okay. Perceptive or something like that. What's the J? I can't remember. Justify? Justice?
Judgment. People that make good judgment.
Ah, I see. Or just judge people. I'm very good at judging people.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I judge people too, but I would say my perception is I'm very perceptive of the energies and reading the room and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So it's like more like energy focused.
You should be a DJ. Huh? You should be a DJ if you're good at reading the rooms.
Yeah. I do like that. Like back when I was, doing like parties a lot, I was like really good host.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So with me, I'm AC Tran. I'm the creative director, founder of 9 Mile Creative, a content marketing business that focuses more on bringing out who you are on the inside out. So we don't just create content just for creating content. We create content from the soul, which is going to attract the audience that you really, really want to attract. So creativity to me is extremely important. Being a father to me is extremely important. I'm a single dad out here in Ottawa. And I'm just like you. I'm into a lot of the dad stuff, the men's stuff, and it's something it's changed my life. And a lot of that stuff we're going to talk about today in terms of like how to use mindset, how to use mentality to pull yourself out of dark places, and not just pull yourself out of dark places, but to excel. So just doing what I can, saying what I can from my own experience. To me, life balance is extremely important. Fulfillment is extremely important. I feel very fulfilled in my life right now. I may not be the richest guy out there right now, but I'm happy. I'm working jobs that I enjoy. My son is happy. And overall life satisfaction, life is good. Life is good.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we've only spent less than 24 hours together, and I feel like that's definitely your vibe. Like you clearly have a lot of passions. You're doing meaningful work. And you're purposeful, like you're intentional about doing things that bring you joy instead of just doing it for money. I respect that. I think in New York, like being someone who works in New York City, you don't get a lot of that. A lot of people are doing it solely for the money. And then one day they'll retire, they'll do the thing that they're passionate about. But it's like by then they're like 60 years old.
But are they happy though, right? Because I grew up in Toronto and like it's very, very similar. I call it like a mini New York.
Yeah.
And that's the environment that I grew up in. Everyone's always grinding all the time. Everyone's always trying to make money, and everyone's like, everything else comes second, right?
Yeah.
It's always about the rat race. It's all about competing. We were talking about competition a little bit earlier too, right? And when you compete on people, like you have to overstep them. You have to make sure that they're below you in order for you to be above them, right? And that, to me, that whole mentality is something that I had to like shed. and get past and get into a place of like humility and just not really feeling like, because like when you start to think of everyone as competition, even if it's just for money, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So when you are competing for money over here, you're also competing for women, you're also competing for status, you're competing for everything, right? We talk about the Mask of Masculinity book about Lewis Howes. Each one of those masks you can compete on. You know, so
trying to be the funniest or the wittiest,
or the alpha, the best
or
alpha,
wear
or
the
the
nicest
strongest,
clothes,
exactly, or flossing the most, flexing the most, and eventually that becomes
or I go on the most vacations, like
whatever it is, right?
There's so many.
You just it's and to me it's the more things you compete on, the more mentally exhausted you're gonna be. So it's better to just let go of all of it. So to me, like I had a big process after my divorce and everything where I just let go of everything. I'm like, I completely redefined how I thought about things, completely redefined like who I was as a person, what I value as a person, and how I let insults get to me. Have you ever read The Four Agreements, the book?
Yeah.
I mean, such a fantastic, tiny little book about, how you should live because, the Four Agreements are, number one, be impeccable with your word. Number two is not making assumptions, right? Number three is never take anything personal, which is so powerful. Number four is always do your best, right? But the two and the three are the ones that for me, number one as well, but number two and number three were the most powerful things that I've implemented over the last couple of years, which is don't make assumptions about anything because it's just going to cause you mental pain and exhaustion, right? And anguish.
Yeah.
Number three is do not take things personal. I find people take things so personal.
Ooh, that's the hardest one for me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Are you still are you actively working on?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard because, like, as like an empath, like, and like I want to be receptive to feedback, right? So I think for me, I'm choosing which ones to implement.
Yeah.
But I used to implement everything.
Yeah.
Like even people who I'm not even close to, they'll be like, "Hey, you should do this," and I'm like, "Oh," and then I'll think about it. And I'm like, "Oh, like why did they say this?" But I think the more of a public figure you are, the more feedback you're getting. So now, like just from a mental mind space, like I have to be a little bit more protective of my energy because like or else everyone has an opinion, Yeah,
because you have such a big following right now too, right? So like I mean, it must be tough to have to really grow that tough skin, I guess, right?
It's tough, yeah, and it used to knock me out like even when I only had like 30,000 total, right? Like I would say I was a LinkedIn influencer first. Like that was the thing that taught me. And then working at LinkedIn definitely helped me be able to like understand, okay, the algorithms and like, okay, what do people like? It's like step one, like tag a lot of people, and then step two, and everyone has their own, but it's like a lot of acknowledgements, like a lot of like emotional stuff. People like that. So if I like won this award, I'd be like, oh, I'd like to thank, but like similar to the Academy Awards, like I like to thank my manager, my mentors and all that. But it's coming from a genuine place, you know?
God, thank God too. Can't forget about thanking God.
I know. I feel like that thanking God alone will get me like 1,000 more likes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You gotta appease your audience, before you appease your God. So,
yeah. But to your point, it is tough to get a lot of feedback. Like it used to take me out for a month. Like let's say, like when I first started podcasting, I'd done over 300 episodes now. But in the beginning, like maybe I'll get like 5 comments, and then I'll be knocked out for like a month because I'm like, oh, maybe like I'm not a great podcaster. But now I can get feedback every day, and I'm like, like it is what it is.
So reflecting on like feedback and like, because we're both Asian, Asian Americans, like Western Asians. When you grow up, we get a lot of feedback from our parents, right? Like from Asian parents, like they're always constantly giving you feedback. They're all constantly giving you criticism. So like, how did you deal with that growing up? And how did that like change how you're dealing with like feedback, criticism and all that kind of stuff now?
Yeah, it's tough. I think Asian men are in a tricky place in society, right? Because growing up, I feel like all the role models, like all the most successful actors are all usually white men, right? So I just never felt like I was like good enough. But now I see it as like a superpower because now I'm like, well, it gave me the chops. Like it gave me like, because I had to work that much harder than everyone else. Now I feel like I have really strong like work ethic. And and in terms of feedback, like when my mom gave me feedback, actually like my mom was pretty chill. Like she was different, or maybe I just like didn't listen to her, but
How dare you?
Yeah, I feel like I wasn't a good son, honestly, like growing up. Like I kind of was like in my own world. Like I didn't really see from her perspective.
I don't think like Asian male can ever be a good enough son. So don't even worry. There's no such there's no good enough son, I think, in the eyes of any Asian parent. So
Yeah, but I feel like now I'm a good son because like, well, I think I have better boundaries now too. Whereas before, like if my mom said something, I would just like shut up. I would just kind of like let her say it. But then I'm like training her that like, oh, it's okay. Like she's allowed to say whatever she wants. But now I challenge her, and that is like uncomfortable for I think as an Asian son. But now she kind of respects me more because she'll be like, oh crap, and she doesn't like it. Like she'll scream, she'll yell, she'll curse me out, whatever. But then like a week later, she'll apologize, and I'm like, that's different. My mom never apologizes.
she's growing.
Yeah.
It's nice to see older generations starting to grow into their own and come like even more like into the self-development or even spiritual, some may say. It's really, really nice to see because previous generations, I felt like, older people would just die with their bullshit, you know what I mean? With this, like with lack of a better term.
It's true.
And now they're starting to realize things are starting to become, and I think the younger generation is actually starting to show them that way a little bit, and they're more receptive to it, which is really, really nice because they grew up not listening to any of their children, and they grew up in a very authoritative kind of setting where the parent knew best and you couldn't talk back. Right now it's like you can't hit them anymore. They can kind of talk back right now, but sometimes the kids talk back in a way where it's actually very productive, and it's a way that can actually reveal things about yourself. And as a parent, if you're open to that, right, it opens up a completely new world of possibilities in terms of like learning and integration and just your own shadows. It's actually it's quite incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, shadows is a good conversation. I'm curious, like in terms of like your shadow, like and especially as like an Asian male, right? Like, do you feel like that was hard because there's no like playbook, right? It's not like, oh, you do these things and this is how you get to learn and have less shame around your shadow. Like what was it through meditation or what type of? Because I noticed you have a lot of Buddhism related things here.
I grew up as a Buddhist, right? So. Buddhism, there's many principles of Buddhism, right? That you can instill into your life. I'm trying to think of one in particular that goes more into it. But like I think it's the most important thing to implement when it comes to what your shadows are and any type of shadow work, if that's something that people are familiar with. It's self-awareness, right? And again, it goes back to the four agreements of not taking things personal. So for you to be able to not take things personal from other people, you must not be able to take things personal from yourself first, right? So if you can actually give yourself a really long critical look at yourself and the things that you're doing in your life, and especially the patterns that you're repeating in your life, in order to see the result that you're actually getting right now. So really looking at yourself without ego as much as possible and like admitting fault as much as possible is the number one step into be able to recognize your shadows. Because in order to work on your shadow first, you need to recognize it, right? And you can't have shame with it. You have to become friends with your shadow, basically, right? Understanding, and it's called self-compassion, because everyone always talks about self-love, but self-compassion is a completely different thing. It's similar, but different, right? Self-love is more of I think more of a buzzword these days. But without self-compassion, there is no self-love. Self-compassion is just being kind to yourself whenever you can, right? We are always hard on ourselves because people are hard on us. Our parents have been hard on us, especially as Asian children growing up in Asian households. Our peers are hard on us. Society is hard on us, especially as men. We always have the notion and the expectation to always thrive and to always be the number one, win the gold medal, and all that kind of stuff. But when you can actually like kind of shed that a little bit, you become a little bit able to look within yourself without ego. Like to me, it's like men or women. Like men are always associated with ego, but everyone has an ego, right? Men have an ego, women have an ego. Shedding that as much as possible. Going from a place where like everything bothers you to maybe nothing bothers you to finally like things that bother you actually make you laugh, right? And it's like that is the progression that you kind of want to follow in order to work on shadows and stuff like that. So for me, it's like I can sit here and just list all the shadows I had to go through growing up in like the hood and like growing up with like Asian parents who like I never really felt like they loved me beyond like wanting me to overperform. Just trying to survive in the ghetto and in the hood where like everyone's always trying to one up each other because it's like there's not enough money or there's not enough success or there's not enough clout for everything for everyone to have. So and then like seeing how that treated me as a person, seeing how that came out in my relationship where I was very insecure, I was very controlling. where I was like not faithful, and I had a marriage, I was divorced, and like, not being a good father for a long time, and always stepping over other people, competing, and always like, robbing, stealing, what I mean? Just like all these things I was looking at in my life. I'm like, why am I doing this? Number one, it's like, it's acceptable because like everyone where I grew up was doing stuff like this. Number two, like being unfaithful. Like my father is showing me examples of all this kind of stuff. Like, so to me, everything I'm seeing and everything that I'm doing wrong is accepted in society, or it's not new. I'm not alone in doing this. So I felt validated in order to be toxic. But when I started to look at myself and be like, okay, this is the way that all this bullshit is manifesting in my life. I'm unhappy. Right? Like I can barely sleep. Like I feel very shitty about myself all the time. Like I do not like how I look. I do not like how I sound. I don't like anything about me right now. Right? But I'm surviving and like I'm making ends meet. But in life, you want to do more than just survive. Right? You want to thrive. You want to do very, very well. So to me, it's like I wanted something better in my life at that time. I needed to start looking at myself. I need to take my ego away, and I really need to start implementing steps one by one to love myself more, be more compassionate with myself, and then get to a place where it's like, not only are you thriving, but you're thriving, but also inspiring other people as well. Right, so.
Damn, that's a lot to unpack there.
Well, I talk a lot, man.
No, I appreciate it.
Put a camera on me, and I'm just like...
No, dude, a lot of what you said resonates. Growing up in like the ghetto as well, I've stole in the past. I've been unfaithful. I've been
West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Were you from West Philly or East Philly?
No. I'm from like the suburb, but close to Philly. It's like 10 minutes from Philly. Okay. But let's just say like a lot of my friends stole, and it was like cool. It was like the cool thing to do, right? Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, like I want to fit in, like, because we lived in like low income housing. So, a lot of minorities were there, and it was just like cool to like get like really baggy pants and throw like wear and just stuff like clothes in your pants, exactly, and I still have like shame around that. And dude, this is when I was like 10 years old, right? It's like, why am I still thinking about these things? But to your point, like the self-compassion is like a big practice I'm working on. And I think I'm finally at a place where I feel good about myself. Like I feel like enough, but it took me 7 years to figure that out, to find out.
So important, man. It's not even just loving yourself. It's first you gotta start with just feeling good about yourself, right? Being okay with who you are. And like things like some things to put into practice are like the negative self-talk. Right? Just catching yourself and you're like, oh, you're such a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? Like, oh, who the fuck does that? Things like that. It's like the moment you like, to me, it's like everyone's always like, oh, this self-love, self-compassion is this big mountain to climb, right? But it's like, what are the small steps that you can start taking every single day in order to get to that, to climb that mountain, to climb Mount Everest? And it's, to me, the most important thing is learning. And that's the number one. I'm going to keep on going back to 4 agreements, but being impeccable with your word. If you're impeccable with your word, are you going to be talking shit about yourself? Are you going to be talking shit about other people? So like those are the small baby steps that people can take to start feeling better about themselves, is just to speak more kindly about yourself, being proud of yourself. Even if you fail, just be like, hey man, you tried really hard. Like, what did you do so far that was like productive? What can you continue to work on? Things like that. Just being very, very, very kind to yourself, right? And to me, it's like I'm putting these practices on myself in my own life, but as a father, I get to implement this in his life too. And raise him completely different than how I was raised, right? And where I can actually start to be more positive with the reinforcement, right? And give him more encouragement, give him more love, which I felt was very missing from like how I was raised. It was very like authoritative how I was raised. So it's been an interesting journey, just not just for myself, but like honestly, my journey with my child too. And it's been it didn't work out with his mom, but like honestly, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. It's just having him.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's inspiring. Like I see how you interact with your son, and it's like very loving. Like it's obvious that you both love each other, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you saw that. Actually, you were able to see really that side of me, even though we were only hanging out for like 24 hours or something like that. Like you got to see that side.
Yeah, and you can tell, right? Because he's respectful, and he's still able to think on like his own. He's creative. Like you're giving him autonomy. Yeah. It's cool. Like it really shows me that there's another way of doing things. Like to your point, growing up, I wasn't modeled the best behavior, right? My dad would be like, we would play ping pong, and he would like smash the ping pong thing in my face. I'm like 5 years old.
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, yeah.
And like we play Monopoly. He would steal from the bank and be like, "You're an idiot." Like,
Oh my
I was
gosh.
stealing the whole time. You can't even. I'm like, I'm 8, man. Like,
School of Hard Knocks.
yeah. And then we would play basketball. He would literally dunk on my face.
Oh my
And
God.
then like be like, not spitting on me, but he would just be like, "Dude, like you
the
suck."
and the balls in your face.
Yeah,
after the
yeah,
dunk
yeah. And
everything.
I'm like,
no.
I'm like 12 years old. Like, come
Oh,
on, Dad.
man.
Like,
wow, that's tough.
yeah. That's what I remember.
Where do you think that comes from, though? Like, you know, I mean, was he really trying to? Like, I know, like, he's trying to like probably toughen you up and stuff like that. But
I think like so he was one out of 14 siblings.
Jesus.
So I think you have to be very competitive to get your dad's attention. So for him, I did a lot of thinking about this. So that's why this is my analysis. When you have that many siblings, they're trying to like. And my dad or my grandfather was a womanizer. He was a very very popular in Vietnam. So many women. Basically, he was the man in the sense that like. Yeah, he. So my dad had to be the best at everything. Be the best at. Look at me, Dad. I swam a mile in the ocean and I didn't die. You know, like so that's where he got that.
Isn't that so interesting that like your dad had that experience growing up, but like his karma was that he only has one son now, right? So it's like the way that he was raised is, and now the way that he has the parent is completely different, right? And he can either choose to accept that mission or choose to reject that mission. You know what I mean? And that's what life really is. You're faced with all these decisions. You're faced with all these triggers. You're faced with all these lessons. And it's, do you make that decision to change or do you perpetuate the cycle? Right? And perpetuating the cycle could mean generations down to your kids and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Right? So like I was talking to a psychic medium one time and the psychic medium was telling me is like, there's no coincidence that you have a son. Right, because like everything that happened with your grandpa, because my grandpa like kind of left my grandma, started a new family, and my dad was my grandma's son, so like the only son that they had, so like he it was like just them two after, right? And I think my dad developed bad relationship habits from watching his father, manifested in his relationship with my mom. And I also perpetuated a divorce. Like, but they weren't divorced though; they stuck together. My grandpa left. But my dad didn't leave because that's probably like he didn't want to have that same experience that I guess he had growing up. And for me, the divorce skipped a generation and I got divorced myself too. And I could have easily continued down that path of like womanizing, of like not respecting women, not respecting myself, hiding, avoiding. But I'm like, you know what? Even though I fell victim to divorce, like I'm still going to try to forge a better way. I'm still going to try to set a good example. And I want to stop all this shit for my own son because like my son now has an opportunity to do better. So it's something that I think about a lot actually. So.
That's pretty deep. Yeah, it's interesting. What you said is very profound, right? It's like we can choose a different path or we could perpetuate what's taught to us.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, I would say in terms of being like my dad, like because I was trying to as hard as possible to not be like my dad, but after a lot of therapy, I realized like in many ways I was like my dad, where like we would play like Monopoly and board games with my wife or like our friends, and I would just dominate,
dunking on them.
Yeah, like basically the same version of what my dad did, but I did that with my wife.
I'm stealing from the bank, bitches.
Where she's crying.
Yeah, oh wow.
Because like no mercy. I'm just like, I'm the best. You haven't won a game in 12 games. Like you suck. Like basically like the same thing. And then through therapy, I'm like, wow, like I'm being like my dad, you know?
Awareness. Having the awareness, right?
But now I'm not as competitive, but I would still stay pretty competitive. But it is interesting how as much as we try to run away from it, there's always going to be some lessons that we learn from our parents.
You can't blame yourself for being like your parents, right? Because like when the age of like 0 to 7, like they say like human behavior wise and like child psychology wise, you are so malleable. Like you almost take everything you learn from them during those years as truth.
Yeah.
Because you don't know any better. You can't discern any better. So like for like it's no surprise at all that people are actually like that, I think that was me. That there's no surprise at all that people are actually similar to their parents in good ways and in bad ways, because like it's really human nature. Right? So I think like we have to forgive ourselves, like even if our parents were like, quote unquote shitty for lack of a better term. like you'd have to realize that like a lot of them is in you. Actually, even biologically, like almost everyone who's down your ancestral line is a part of you. You know, like if you actually think, you ever like take a camera and like show it at a TV, and like you see perpetually like all the TVs in the back of that background or that picture. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where just like frame after frame and a frame, and it literally goes on forever.
Yeah.
If you think about like a sperm cell in a ball, right, and like a testicle in your in your scrotum, you literally are a sperm cell within a sperm cell within a sperm cell within a sperm cell. Like literally, it's like perpetuated. So like at all times, you're basically carrying the weight of all of your ancestors on you at the same time, right? And knowing that we are one together with all of them, right? Meaning that we have to atone for all of their karma, and including our own and everyone that comes after us too. It becomes a really, really big responsibility to take on, and a lot of people don't think about it that way.
That's deep, man.
Yeah. The ball, the sperm within the sperm. You know what I mean? You're only gonna hear that here.
Yeah. I mean, intergenerational trauma is like a real thing, you know, like as much as I try to avoid I used to pretend like I don't care about my dad. I'm like, oh, he's dead to me. I wouldn't even go to his funeral. Like that's how angry I was, right? But then there's all this like unconscious like resentment, and then when as soon as I like forgave him for like not being in our lives, like I had so much more energy, so much more peace of mind. I was able to like get married finally. I was able to like do all these different things, buy a house. Like there was just so much energy, negative energy I was holding on to. And then to your point, like then I forgave myself for being angry at him. And that was like the biggest like, oh my God, everything opened up from that.
It's weight off your shoulder, right?
Yeah,
when
literally.
When you forgive your own, and not everyone gets there, because when it comes in terms of self-development, in terms of spirituality, people start learning about their ancestral traumas. People start learning about the mistakes that their parents made. And a lot of people respond to that with anger, right? Very angry at like, oh, why are you like this? Why did you raise me this way? Why I'm this way because of you? You're blaming, you're pointing fingers. And a lot of people, like, even though they learned all these concepts and they're more self-aware of where their trauma came from, they're not healed because there's no forgiveness, right? You have to eventually learn to forgive them. In order for you to forgive them, you have to forgive yourself first, right?
Yeah.
So forgive yourself for having to go through that experience, and then eventually forgiving them for, not knowing better, really. They were raised you the way that they knew how to raise someone, I guess, or with the tools that they had. And like as a parent now, you realize that like you're thrown into this whole game and you just don't know. You don't know what to do. Like, you can read all the damn parenting books in the world, but you just don't know what to do. And it's tough, man. But yeah, I literally lost what I was gonna say, but it's gonna come back to me. But it was a very important point when it comes to like ancestral trauma and parenting and stuff like that. Like and actually able to forgive someone, and it's a huge undertaking to take. Most people don't go through in their whole life, or most people are actually not fortunate enough to even have their parents around anymore.
That's true. And that's what made me realize it too, because a lot of my friends' parents have passed away, and I see like how they didn't complete that, right? And I see how like, I'm curious. So when you became a father, right? Did that? I'm assuming that really changed that. Like you have much more compassion for your parents, right?
Yeah. Here's the thing, okay? Like when I and I've said this on a few podcasts before. It's like, when a woman has a child, right, and she bears a child for 9 months, and when she has that child, and this is just an assumption, but I spoke to a lot of women, and they feel like that there's an instant connection with that baby, right? Because that baby, they feel that baby inside them growing the whole time. Whereas a man, you're kind of just like, listening to footsteps, putting your hand on you feel the kicks and stuff like that. And when the baby is born, like especially as a first time father, a lot of men are like, oh my God, it's like I'm supposed to feel something. It's supposed to be this magical moment. Some guys apparently do, but for me, it's like something wrong with me. Like why do I feel like this is just another Tuesday? You know what I mean? Like, like what do
my friends say?
You know what I mean? So, but the problem was that like I felt like there was something wrong with me, right? So I didn't feel like am I a monster?
Expectations, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, nothing clicked right away when I became a father. Like everything was just like, okay, what do I do now? Now it just feels like more work, or I have more tasks now in my day, and I have to take things seriously, or you know what I mean? I'm going to be a bad father, or they're going to take my kid away. So I think about consequences in that way. But when it comes to like things clicking on me and like thinking about my own father, the only thing that made me go to that point was when my marriage started falling apart, right? When the marriage started falling apart, when I was spending less time away from my baby, and like I was alone and isolated. And this is very important for a lot of men, because like when you're isolated and you're alone and you're insecure and like you're just in like serious pain, men, you have two choices at that point. Number one, you avoid everything, right? And you just, go off the deep end, whether it's gambling, internet porn, prostitution, like anything. You keep your mind off of shit. Or you could sit in that pain and then go through the shit, right? And then figure out a way that you can show up as a better man after this. And how can I use this pain to become better? But nowadays, the society that we're in and like all the options that we have, it's just so much easier to go road A, right? And just avoid, right? And and then justify, validate your decisions, and like that's it. Just constantly making excuses for not stepping up, really. To me, like, when I say man up and when I say things like, step into, your responsibility, it's not, be tough or be strong. It's really just own up to your shit. Apologize when you need to, and work on yourself to do better. That's it. To me, that's the true measure of a man.
Wow. That's deep, man. Yeah. Having written Redefining Masculinity, like what you're saying certainly resonates with me. And it's funny, you're right. Like a lot of that is like, oh, when the day he was born, like my life changed, right? But to your point, I also have friends that have newborns and they're just like, he's like, I might sound like an asshole, but I don't feel any different. And it hasn't hit them yet. But then eventually, at some point, it does, right? That's what I hear.
When the kids turn like 4, like this is my own experience, old enough to kick a ball, old enough to throw a ball at you, that's when the dads get really involved, because it becomes a lot more fun.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. That's when we actually get that feedback between a father and a child.
Huh.
Right. And the connection and the playfulness, and like it's bringing that masculine energy into that child's life.
Yeah.
When you can actually step into a role where you can start guiding, right? And start teaching, and they're starting to be receptive of what you're teaching to them. That's very important for masculine and men energy, like male energy. Yeah.
That's so interesting hearing you say that, because I would say I'm inherently like, I have a lot of feminine energy, right? I'm naturally like a very nurturing, like caring, like empathetic person. But when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I guess in some ways I am like an older brother to like a lot of people. I have a lot of people call me every day for advice, and that's like, oh, maybe that's my way of contributing via masculine.
That's wisdom. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wisdom. It's teaching. It's like the sage. It's like it's very, very masculine to want to lead. Right. So anytime you want to lead someone, even if it's like leading by example or teaching them a better way or like really helping them, like that's, to me, that's like true masculine energy, because you want better for them. You want better for the world, and you're doing your part for helping make the world better.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing more masculine than that.
Huh. So I guess I am masculine after all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's okay to be both, right? Because I'm a single father. So like I'm here. If I'm not nurturing him here, then no one's going to nurture him here.
Right,
If I'm not doing the chores here, if I'm not cleaning up here, no one's cleaning up here. Right. So to me, it's very, very important that I have both those rules, and I stay in touch with both sides of like my masculine energy and my feminine energy. But that involves shedding your ego, right? Because how many men can actually sit there and, just like you right now, admit that they're feminine? Nobody.
I mean, for me, it's very obvious. So I guess, I've come to terms with it, right? But to your point, I'm very masculine and like, hey, like 300 podcast episodes, 5 books, like
action.
Speaking in front, what I mean? Like, I take action like no one's business,
That's great.
So in that aspect, I'm very masculine, right? Like,
exactly.
I'm not afraid to like, do things. And I think a lot of people are afraid to take action now.
Well, a lot of people, okay, so let's go back to that whole conversation about, like, make sure my camera's working. The whole conversation about, like, men actually feeling that they can actually admit whether they're feminine or not. Because I'm a single person, or I'm single, right? So for me to go out to the dating pool and to say anything, or to show any fragment or any scent of, like, being too feminine, not being manly enough, and that's parts of my ego that I still need to work on too, right? But, and I find for Asian men actually growing up, because Asian men have the stereotype of just naturally being more feminine, I think, right? Within the dating pool, which really cripples Asian men's abilities and chances in the dating pool. Like, you're married, you're out of the game, like you're good to go. But there's a lot of men who are either in my shoes or even worse, who are trying to date out there and who are trying to maybe mask any femininity they have, avoiding it, and like trying to like overcompensate, just like in Mask of Masculinity. to try to be ultra masculine in a way, right? Or being dicks and assholes.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Or
So,
like be super successful, make as much money as possible.
so that's the thing. Like for Asian men, actually, right? Because like in many ways, like unless you're like Bruce Lee or something like that, we're not very jacked or we're like, you know what I mean? So like, what is the thing that Asian men fall back on when it comes to status? Right? It's always money, right? It's always like,
Yep.
you know, you're always going to bury yourself in work and make more and more money to start to attract women, right? But that sends the wrong message.
Yeah.
Right. Because then what type of woman are you going to attract like that? Right? Are you actually going to attract fulfillment? Are you going to attract someone who actually loves you? Or is just someone who's just going to love you for your money? Right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like if you have the awareness as an Asian man who's going through that perpetuating cycle, you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to try to work my ass off, make a whole bunch of money, and then try to attract the woman of my dreams. But like, what if she doesn't even love me and I end up even lonelier than I am right now when I'm alone? Do you know what I mean? So like it's like a catch-22, and then when you start thinking logically like that, because a lot of Asian people think very logically. When you think logically like that, you're like, okay, I'm fucked. Like either way, I'm fucked. So then what do I do?
Damn, that's deep, man. And what you just said, like I'll never forget what you just said too. Like Asians do think logically. I feel like, right? Because and especially Asian men, right? Because to your point, society so much. I mean, I think it's changed. The last 6 years have changed. Like I'm 36, so like the first 30 years of my life, we were not masculine at all. We weren't cool. I think with BTS, there's like, okay, now like BTS single-handedly probably has done more for Asian men than anything else in the world right now.
I believe so, but like even like I mean, they're still very like they're not always the most masculine kind of like portrayed either, right?
Yeah, but
they're
they get women,
they're rich,
though.
they get a lot of women,
Yeah.
but a certain type of woman as well.
True.
Okay, think about this.
Alright,
Think
true.
about you're American, I'm Canadian, we're Western, right? We're Western Asians growing up, right?
Yeah.
Like, do the girls that we interact with every single day, like, are they into the BTS type?
Depends on what you're into, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a different
growing,
type of woman.
And you know what? New York is progressive, Toronto's progressive.
Right,
but when I moved out to Ottawa, it's still very like country singer, like hockey player. Like that's what the girls
so
are
in
into
that case,
here.
yeah, probably not.
You know what I mean? So
I probably wouldn't help you out too much.
yeah, like if I started dressing like BTS and like I started doing my hair and like I started dyeing my hair and stuff like that, I really don't know if that's gonna help my dating chances here. Like I don't know. I'm gonna like if I start putting nail polish on or something like that, I really don't think that's gonna get me more women. But
yeah,
that's just
fair.
where I am. So like there's different and you know I like this
point.
conversation because I talk about you were talking earlier about Hollywood and like how you know it's a lot of white representation.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Asian representation, it's like kung fu or it's the bad guy or it's the skinny guy or it's like the
worst.
emasculated, it's the funny guy. It's like kind of the geeky guy.
The geeky one.
Yeah. So until that changes, until there's more prominent men, and even Shang-Chi and Simu Liu, who I actually had the opportunity to work with this past summer, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But to me, it's still a kung fu stereotype. I need to start seeing like guys like Jet Li and like Romeo Must Die and like being the lead,
Right.
the lead romantic role
That's
with
fair.
a non-Asian counterpart.
Right, which is so
within the
rare.
movie. Oh, you're not going to see
so
it.
rare.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very.
It's like
rare.
you have to actively seek it. It's not in the mainstream.
It was like Glenn in Walking Dead, I guess, right? Like you see Glenn in The Walking
Yo,
Dead.
that guy, I love that guy. Yeah, he's like in so many ways our idol, right? Because he's like,
well, he's a start, but he's not the most attractive Asian guy either,
Right,
Like
right.
he's just like, the world's about to end, and like there's not many guys left to bang, and like I'm gonna bang this Asian guy basically.
this
you know
is
what
the
I mean?
funniest like conversation I've had in a while.
That's just the way I think about things. I
Yeah.
like laughing about things. Honestly, like things are so serious about what I think about, but I'm like, why don't I just bring some humor into things, and like,
Yeah.
it just makes things so much more lighter.
I feel like we could talk about this topic forever,
Oh,
man.
okay. And
So-
it's a good niche.
And man, this is the first time I'm ever saying this, but like, so I dated like a lot of white women growing up, right? But I had so many insecurities around like the sex part, like portion of
yes,
it,
yes.
because of like,
Yeah,
you know,
stereotypes.
Yeah. So I had so many chances. Like they're like, hey, like let's have a threesome. Like basically all these opportunities, but I botched all of it because I was so insecure. And looking back at it, I'm like, so many regrets, so many.
Well, it's cool that you even had the
Dude, I
those
was
opportunities.
actually like somewhat of a womanizer, like, but then I was too chicken to seal the deal, so I would do everything else but that. But
Interesting.
looking back at it, I'm like, what the fuck? But it's because, like you said, right, like all the media stuff, you know, growing up, like you just have all these insecurities. Like,
Yeah. But you're even actually able to get to that point, which is like a lot of guys that I talked to, and even my own experience at growing up was like I was too scared to even like open up those opportunities. So I didn't even get many opportunities like that growing up.
I see.
Right? I even had this bet with my friend back in university, and it was like this black guy, a close friend of mine, and he didn't smoke weed, he didn't do any drugs at all. He's like, hey, AC, or Andy is like, a lot of people call me Andy, and they're like, hey, if you get a white girl, I'm gonna smoke weed. And I'm like, oh shit, like you're gonna smoke weed, bro.
That's
You never
so
smoked
funny.
weed your whole life.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like this big mountain. It was my Mount Everest, right? My Mount Everest was
This is
conquering.
the funniest conversation.
No, I'm literally serious.
Oh
my
my
Mount
God.
Everest was conquering a white woman. Like I never had one before.
That's
I was
like our dream. That's like our like dream. I feel like.
well, it's not just us. There's other cultures too, where they see like
Yeah.
white woman or the snow bunny or whatever is
Yeah.
like the
it's
status
like
symbol.
it's like the Mount Everest is a great example.
Yeah.
It really is.
Everest.
It really
you
is.
can die climbing Mount Everest, basically. But no. So to me,
Oh,
to me, it's like eventually I finally got my first white girlfriend, and I was like, oh my god. But the problem with that was that like I didn't approach her in that relationship as if she was a human, as if she was like someone who like I could really like get to know. To me, it was like a conquest. You know what I mean? And it was
interesting.
super unfair.
Well, how do you
to
know
her.
it's not the other way around as well?
If it is, that's her own stuff that she has to
Yeah.
deal with, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think she was a really nice girl, so I really don't think that was the case. I think she might have dated an Asian guy before too, but like I think I'm not sure though. I don't think so, but
She got
possibly.
yellow fever.
Yeah. You know, but that's more common now than it was. Like there was no such.
Yeah, the
really-
other way around. Usually it's white
Yeah,
men with.
yeah. Now it's like the girls are getting to anime and shit. They're getting to
yeah.
BTS.
But to
or-
your point, is that the type of women that you want to marry?
No.
Right.
But those girls are pretty cool, like the anime girls and stuff like
It's
that.
different.
Like, yeah, that's
It's
different
different.
because like I feel like those type of girls, like it's not very superficial. They're into the culture and like they'll actually get a
Right.
chance to know you, to get to know you.
Right.
They're not fetishizing, right? Whereas I
okay,
feel
I
like when
see.
men fetishize like Asian women, it's like completely different,
Right.
Right. But I think like for me, so anyways, like that whole relationship was just like a mess because like I felt like I wasn't I wasn't mentally like ready to be a good partner. And again, like the one after that was my wife, and I did not again feel mentally ready to be a partner to her, and which led to like a really bad toxic relationship after that for many years, where again it was a conquest, right? Like I finally started to like shed the whole conquest mentality and being like, hey, listen, like I'm who I am, I will attract who I attract, and I'm looking for a genuine connection, I'm looking for meaning, I'm looking for purpose. And now it's starting to kind of get there a little bit better. And I'm now not just jumping at like the hottest white girl that I see. You know what I mean? Whereas one point it was like, yeah, trophy, kill. You know what I mean? Like it was like a
Yeah.
trophy kill. And and now I'm just in a better place, and I feel better about myself. Like I'm not really so insecure about how I look anymore. I'm like, hey, they're going to be racist and they're going to think one thing about. Then I don't want to be with that person anyways. I'm like, sure, like someone needs to humble them and someone needs to teach them about like our culture and like, but it's not gonna be me. It's not my job to teach someone. It's not my job to change someone's perspective on like someone else's race. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a deep topic, man. Yeah, I think dating with Asian men is like a topic that not a lot of people talk about. Maybe like anonymously, like in Reddit
yeah.
and stuff like that, but not in the open like this. But that in itself is like, man,
It's a huge ass topic, dude.
yeah,
Huge.
Like growing up, I had so many insecurities, right? I mean, to your point, like it was interesting. Like the three of us, there was like me. Maybe I shouldn't mention names because like they're
John Doe.
Yeah, so me and these other two Asian guys, we were all like very social, and we all got like a lot of white women. Like
This is the
you know.
frat years or before that?
No, in high school.
Oh, high school.
But yeah. I mean, the fraternity is different because like it's almost like it's like the alpha. It's like the more typical alpha. Like, you know, all like my fraternity bros are like they were like quarterbacks and like
Oh,
football
wow.
players and like
Yeah.
got drafted to to college to play foot. Like
Sick.
so they were like I would say more of like the. But it was cool because we all like defy like the Asian stereotypes, right? Where they were like yoked and they were like, really smooth and like they were able to
What's yoked? What does that mean?
jacked.
Oh, okay.
They're just
Yeah,
muscular.
yeah.
But it was interesting, right? Because I was exposed to that, it was cool because I was like, like this is something different. But then I also saw like the hyper masculine and energy that provided. To your point, it was all about conquest, right? It was all like, let me just like get with as many women as possible, right? So then there wasn't a lot of substance. It was just like, check off the
Okay,
list.
what's that for? Like, what is that for to conquest? For me, it's like
Yeah.
the question is like, what is this conquest for? And in the end, the answer was that I'm trying to fill a void within myself about how I feel about myself.
Yes, exactly.
right? So once you realize like, oh, this is what I'm trying to do, this is the void I'm trying to fill, you no longer try to throw stuff into a bottomless pit. You start to try to patch over that hole.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't need to try to fill it anymore. And I mean, I guess I'm still kind of going through that a little bit. But it's not just women. It's like could be any void in your life, right? If you feel poor, if you feel because you know there's a difference between being broke and being poor, right? Being broke means you just don't have money. Being poor is a mentality. Right? If you're poor, you're never ever going to be rich, right? Because you're poor. If you're broke, you can be rich one day, right? So if you're poor, you can just cement over that hole, fill that void, right? And then now you're actually able to take the steps to be where you actually want to be. But first, you need to cover that hole so that you can actually build on top of it.
Yeah, that definitely resonates. It's like it could be buying a new car or buying a house, or it could be, oh, I got promoted, I got this nice title, or I get to go on this nice vacation, you know, and I've been guilty of that for sure. You know, every time it's like, oh, maybe if I do this, if I get like this many subscribers on YouTube, I'll be happy. Or maybe if I get interviewed on radio, I'll be happy, right? But it's like none of that matters if we don't do the inner work, like deep work, and sit with ourselves. And to your point, like feel the anger, feel the sadness, like feel all the emotions before trying to avoid it via, you know, working too hard, or via like, oh, let me like try to get, you know, maybe if I get into Google, I'll be happy, right?
Overcompensating.
Yeah.
They call that destination happiness, right? Like everyone's like, oh, I'm just one thing away from happiness. Or if I was to be there, if I was happy, if I had that partner, I'd be happy. You know what I mean? But it's all about being present in the present moment that you're in right now, and being happy in it. But in order for you to be happy in the present moment, you need to live in the present moment, right? So you have to like be more mindful into what's happening now. Whereas like a lot of people who focus a lot on like what's happening in the future, that's how anxiety develops, right? Because anxiety lives in the future. Anything that you're stressing about in the future is anxiety. That's where anxiety is. It's fear of the unknown, right? The unknown of the unknown is what's in the future. Everything in the past is known. Everything in the future is unknown. Right? So if you have fear of that, you're going to develop anxiety, right? If you're living in the past, then you're living with regret. Right. So the most important thing is to shed both of those things, live happily in the present. Because regardless of like, you know, the job you have, regardless of whatever, like, you know what I mean? Be having the gratitude as to, you know, have a roof over your head, you have warmth, you have heat, you have clothes. You know, maybe you have some people care about you and stuff like that. Like being mindful, being grateful of that moment, because that's all that matters. Like if you have something that you have court next week or something like that, you got to worry about, that's next week, you know?
Yeah.
Being able to be in this moment right now, making the most of this moment. Because in the end, when you die, the only thing that matters is these moments that you're actually living right now in the present. Right.
That's deep, man. It's a good reminder. I think for so long, especially with Asian men, I think we think about the future a lot.
Yeah.
Because our value in society, or how we get the white girl, how we get girls in general, is through success, through like getting into Harvard, or
that's
through
the
like
only route. The only route.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's like, to your point, if that's the North Star, then we're never going to be, because there's always going to be another person that looks better, that has a nicer penthouse apartment, has a nicer Lamborghini, right? Like that game will lose, because and it's all extrinsic, right, versus intrinsic.
There's nothing in life that only has one track or one road, right? And that's something that growing up Asian, you have to shed, because like they're always like, oh, well, maybe there's three roads. There's doctors, there's lawyer, and there's probably pharmacist or some shit, you know what I mean? Or accountant. You mean, one of those few roads, but like it's the rigidity, right, of like how things are and how things should be is how we're taught in school, right? It's either this, or this. Take your choice, right? But the idea of like actually being, because think you're a child, right? You're a child, you're playing, and you have a mindset that's like almost unlimited. You have an imagination where like anything can happen. I can take these blocks and they can be a fortress. I can take these blocks and they can be like, you know, like a sports arena. Like I could literally do anything with just these blocks with my imagination, right? Why do we lose that? Why are we taught to give that up when you can actually grow up in life and you can become somewhat of a magician? Right. So I actually have a magician tattoo, like a tarot card of a magician tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
And what this is for is that it actually reminds me that like I'm actually the magician in my own life. Right. So like if I want to pull a rabbit out of my hat, I can pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Yeah.
Right. And when you have that mentality that like literally nothing is impossible, like I'm not gonna be able to fly or anything or run like 100 miles per hour, but why focus on what I can't do? right? Why don't I just get those restrictions out of my head? And why don't I just, if I want to do something, first of all, it starts with a thought, right? So if I want to, run politics or something like that, I'm going to have that idea. Everything starts with an idea. Anything that you see around you, Empire State Building even, it was started off as an idea. Now it's there. Right. So like having that unlimited mindset, that unlimited mentality that like I can be a magician, I have a magic wand and it's like right here in my head. Like then things will happen for you just because you're not stopping yourself from letting things happen from you. And most of the time, the only thing that can stop you is yourself, right? Your own insecurities, your own self-doubts, your beliefs about certain things. Your beliefs are so important. Like you're in coaching, you know a lot about limiting beliefs, right? Right. Shedding those limiting beliefs, becoming aware of those limiting beliefs is like such important work. And it's so valuable too, right? Because these are like, it's almost like your handicaps, right? Your limiting beliefs is almost like a physical illness that you have, right? Let's say you have like a broken arm, for example. If you have a broken arm, what can you do with a broken arm, right? Having a limiting belief is like having a broken arm.
Good analogy. Yeah, I know one of the big limiting beliefs, like being an Asian man, right, was like, I always thought like I wasn't good looking enough, right? Because when you turn on the TV, the white guy gets the girl, and so and a lot of times it is the Asian girl too, right? So you're almost like brought up like
Harry Potter.
Oh man, but then it's like, oh, maybe if I work out enough, like I'll get the girl, right? So it's like one of those things that, in some ways I'm happy because it led me to CrossFit, Spartan races, running like
it pushes you,
but it's like, was I doing this because I was like trying to be good enough, or like do I just genuinely like the art of running, right? It's like
the void. It's the void, right? Being aware of the void.
Yeah.
You know what I heard one time? Like when they started like importing a lot of Asian men and like into America to start working on the railroads and all that kind of stuff like that. So at first, like white women actually found Asian men quite intriguing because they're exotic, right? And it was like really cool.
Yeah.
And what I heard was that there was a lot of insecurity from the white men at that time, right? So Hollywood started perpetuating like Asian men in like really evil kind of like roles, right? So they were always the bad guy. They were always the foreigner bad guy, the long mustaches and evil. So then they really took it was like almost a whole smear campaign actually against Asians, and then later on other foreigners and stuff like that, to always portray them as either less than or as villains.
I see.
And then people think like that's like the start of all these perpetuating stereotypes because like they started it. They started the rumors, right? Like no Asian guy's gonna go out and be like, hey, by the way, we all have small penises. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's gonna be other people starting those rumors and spreading it almost like as a defamation, right? Like it's.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a theory about like basically that's actually what happened, and we grew up believing all that kind of stuff, right? Because like again, you will turn on the TV, we're never ever the heartthrobs, right? So you tend to believe it after a while, and then you kind of just get put into a shell, into a box, and like you kind of stay there. And this, other minorities actually get very angry at Asians sometimes. Because like you've heard the term like model minority.
Yep.
That like, oh, we always do what we're told. We stand in line. If they tell us we're not good enough, we're like, yeah, sure, we're not good enough. You guys are the boss. You guys take care of it. You know what I mean? And we just work within the system, right? Because we need to do what we need to do to like take care of our families and have jobs. So we do that. We fall in line and we do that. But the other minorities are they're depending on us to also stand together with them and like push the envelope, and says who says that they need to be number one? Who says that that we can't actually rise up and be like the upper echelon of society, right? Like why do we have to sit in this box even though it works for us, right? So who's to say like who's right and who's wrong and stuff like that? But it's something very, very, very interesting to think about, right? Because do you want to live in a world where Asian men are good enough, or do you want to live in a world where like we're just as good as anybody else? Really, there's no superiority, and like. And again, if you look at the black population and like things that they have to go through in terms of like systemic racism or finding work or like things like that, it becomes like so much harder for them when they grow up with these ideals that like they're not good enough, or that no one wants to hire them. They can't even catch a cab in New York City. It's like with that mentality is enough just to really, really keep you like very like down, like, kind of like stepped on. But in order to grow out of that, like you really have to like have that magician mentality that I was talking about before, right? Where it's like you have to truly believe that like you can actually get out there and be like next Elon Musk, the next like Jeff Bezos. You can actually make like a huge, huge, huge difference in this world and splash in this world. Who's to say that they can't?
Yeah. I mean, but even like you said, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, right? Like even in a lot of these role models, it is typically like white men. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it is rare. Like I don't know if you remember Tony Hsieh, but he was the only Asian. He was a Taiwanese like billionaire. The
Okay.
guy who he got acquired by Amazon. He was the founder of Zappos,
Okay.
and he had a lot of anxiety. He had a lot of social anxiety, right? And then he eventually like went downhill. But that was like the only business idol that I remembered, and I was just like, wow. Like I looked up to him, like we all did, like a lot of Asian men did. And then when I found out he died basically through suicide, right? I was like, man, like that's so tragic, you know.
Wow.
But I wonder, yeah. I mean, who knows, like what happened? But it's interesting.
When a man takes his own life, it's like it's very tragic because it's almost like he can't take on the weight of the world anymore.
Yeah,
Based on the way society is, based on the way that he feels about himself, based on the way that he lets other people down.
yeah.
And that's something that I really, really want to, help out with. Like for the last Movember, I don't know if you guys have Movember out in the States, but it's
Yeah, we
like
do.
men's mental health. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we did a discussion panel last year. Like I hosted one.
Yeah.
And we brought a guy on who was like a 3-4 time like suicide survivor.
Oh, wow.
And he was talking about his stories and all the things that he struggled and like, really lifting the veil on like what happens when you think about when you have ideations of suicide and like what may push you to it. And like he had a lot of rough stuff happen. He had lost a child. He was, he was dealing with alcoholism, and like it was just a really, really sad, but in many ways heroic story because he helps other people now like with suicide prevention awareness and stuff like that. But it was interesting because I think all men can relate. And this is why men's work is so important because even though we're all individuals, we all feel, certain, similarities in terms of like how we feel about ourselves and, how we feel about relationships and how we feel about our role as men and our role as providers and our role in society, period. How our roles show up in relationships, gender roles, things like that, right? So all men can kind of like agree and kind of think about stuff like that. And it creates like this nice relatability, I guess, amongst men, right? So if men were to actually shed some of their ego, they could actually really show up as brothers for each other. And I think more men need to step away from the competition mindset and get more into the brotherhood mindset, right? Whereas like together we grow stronger, right? We're here to build this community together. We're here to build this society together. But that we're long away from that because of the lack mentality, right? It's like, competition, capitalism. There's only so much for the top to eat, and there's like, if I don't eat, then that means that like my family doesn't eat. So it's either my family eats or your family eats, right? And you kind of you really want to step away from that because what you want to have is you know about this through coaching is the abundance mentality,
Yeah.
the abundance mindset, right? Where it's like there's enough for all of us to eat, right? Like what's even with this competition. Right. Like, in fact, I like when people approach me like their competition or like, they want to eat up my plate and stuff like that. Like I used to get offended by that. I used to want to defend myself. I used to want to like be like, no, like fuck you. Like that's mine, But now I'm just like, just go take it. Like, I'm trying to be generous with my time and with my money and with my energy. And well, not so much my energy. I protect my energy and my time. But if I can be generous with some of the things that I'm doing and like helping others and stuff like that, or like, being charitable, then to me, it's like, that's the most abundant you can be because you'd be like, yeah, I'm not the richest guy. I'm not even in a position here to even like financially donate a lot of money. But if I do it anyways, that's just me showing to the world, to the universe that like this money just comes and goes, right? I'm giving it away because I feel like I have a lot of it already. And when you feel like you have a lot of it already, it'll just it'll keep flowing to you.
That's deep.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that abundance with money for sure. Whereas my parents were like, "Oh, it's save everything."
It's
Like
the opposite.
penny, like every penny needs to be saved. You know what I mean? Like all the time because we never had enough. We never had enough. And I would never spend at all on anything because my parents would never let me spend. And look at me now. I spend like crazy. Look around my house, right? Like so, like it's
cool,
good.
though.
It was good in a way, but it was also bad in a way because there's a lot of stuff probably here that I don't need. It's true. But it's interesting. It's interesting.
I also want to be mindful. Do you have to pick up your son now?
In like a few minutes, yeah. Let me just check up on some messages.
Okay.
I did get some work messages that came in.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if those are okay. Thanks for figuring out the. Okay, perfect. No, that's good. Someone actually thanked me for something I did earlier, so that's nice. While I'm doing something else, that's great. Yeah, look, honestly, when you start changing the mindset of how you look at the world, and it's like the lens, right? Like to me, it's like your mindset is like your lens. You know how you put the blue light goggles on?
Yeah.
To me, that's what perspective is all about, right? You change your lens, you change the way you look at the world. And when you change the way you look at the world, things become better for you. Like you just start living more light. You start to sleep better at night, and you start to make an impact in other people's lives. And the most important thing is you start to attract good people into your life too, right?
That's true.
And then together, what that universe is trying to teach you at that point is that, like, listen, I'm giving you more people who think the way you think.
Yeah.
Together, you guys can actually change the world.
This is a really good topic. So I just quit the corporate to do my own entrepreneurial stuff. And to your point, I'm attracting people like you into my life now, right? Where this is like people like us or who I'm hanging out with like the last 3 weeks since that has happened, right? Before it wasn't like that. But now all of a sudden I'm like around people like you that are very like, we're very generous, we're very giving, like more abundant, more karmic, like positive people. And I'm like, but it only happened like the last 3 weeks, I would say, since I've like left the corporate stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay in that. It's the vibration, right?
Right.
Talk about vibration. Like when you vibrate at a certain like frequency, then you will just attract that type of frequency around you too, as long as you stay true to that frequency. Right. And maybe the reason that you're meeting all of us is because you have this big platform, right? And then you have the ability to amplify the platform, right? To your own message, to others' messages, right? For your audience or for whoever is going to listen. So keep it up for sure. To me, like if you're feeling uncertain about everything that you're going through, because it's a transition, you're in a transition, right? So of course, sometimes you're going to have doubts about what you're doing or let things like this be like a testament to you or like a sign to you that you're going in the right direction.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way.
Even so, because you will, some days will feel, it's the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like I took 3 years off of my day job to pursue entrepreneurism. And some days I woke up and I didn't want to do work. Some days I woke up and I'm like, man, am I making the right decision or not? And that weighed heavily on me sometimes, right? So like there's going to be, I mean, of course, you know, you've been in the entrepreneurial world for a while. There's like so many ups and downs, right? There's a lot of, there's ebbs and flows and like a lot of like just things that are just not consistent sometimes, right? And that's normal. And I think a lot of us, speaking personally for myself, because I work in a government job, which is like the most stable, most comfortable job there is. Like the more you get used to a comfortable situation, the less you want to sway away from that comfortable position. And then you get so used to being comfortable that like anything that happens outside of your comfort zone is like devastating to you. Right. So I work very, very hard to make sure like that never happens to me, that I'm adaptable, that's why I still work all these jobs. Right. Because I want to push myself to still be an entrepreneur. I want to push myself to still try to grow something. And like, if something does happen there, I still have something to fall back on. I have skills that I'm developing. And the more you push yourself out of your comfort zone, the better the quality of your life is going to be. Because what it does, and like, more people should explain it this way, is that like the more you push out of your comfort zone, the bigger your comfort zone becomes, right? So like I speak
the visual, yeah.
So like I speak to people, I'm like, oh, you want to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't you be more comfortable if you were in a bigger house, right? So why don't you expand your house and make yourself more comfortable? So now that, you know, a situation where like, a difficult conversation with a coworker, so for example, used to like just make you shit in your pants.
Yeah.
But now as you push your comfort zone, now you're able to have those conversations. Now your comfort zone becomes bigger. Now you can tackle other things now. Now I can maybe have a difficult conversation with my boss. Right. And now that comfort zone becomes bigger. Oh, maybe now I can speak on a stage in front of people. Right. And just being able to like, oh, wow. And it's the child's mind.
That's a great analogy, right? Because people like look and they're like, how'd you get like 700,000 like subscriber one day? It's like, it's not like I woke up, right? It's like these little milestones, like we'll work that LinkedIn, then understand, then be able to sell courses, be able to like take copywriting classes, be able to, you know what I mean? Like these little micro skills, but from the outside, it just seems like, oh, he just, you know, maybe he got lucky one day. And it's like, no, like, it's like a lot of these little things, right? But it's because like I became uncomfortable with like putting myself out there or like speaking in front of, you know, stages for self-development or doing workshops with universities, right? So but people don't really see that. They're just like, you know, so I like that analogy, right? Because I think I would say my comfort zone, I try to be uncomfortable like every day, you know? And it's like, I try to do one thing that makes me uncomfortable, but sometimes I don't, right? Like to your point, some days, like I'm like, okay, today I just want to like chill.
Yeah.
But even just chilling for me is probably the most uncomfortable thing.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Push yourself of your comfort zone by just relaxing more.
Yeah. Like this I haven't really worked at all during this like trip, right?
Nice.
Which is like very uncomfortable for me because I'm
Good.
so used to working.
You're kind
billion.
of working now, like you're making content. And,
True,
like, you know what I
true.
mean? Like, but it's still
Yeah.
it's a cool way to work, right? And I love pushing different ways to work and like cooler ways to work because like when you work and it doesn't feel like work,
Yeah, this doesn't feel like work.
yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Like it's fun. They're very professional. Everything's taken care of here. Like we have cameras up the ass, microphones up the ass. You know what I mean? Like it's taken care of for you. You know,
Right,
so
right.
it's nice. It's moments like this are meant to just be enjoyed and just to make the most of it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good talk though,
Cool.
man.
Yeah, man, dude. This has been we touched on a lot of different topics.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, so check out this episode if you're an Asian man dealing with insecurities, if you're a high achiever, if you want to have a better relationship with your parents, yourself, like have self-compassion, if you're being hard on yourself, if you're hard with others, if you're judging others or you're judging yourself, this is the perfect episode for you to watch.
You know, we've been friends on Pokemon Go for a very long time. It's so funny when you actually get to meet like online friends from like games and stuff like that.
Trippy.
So we met through a mutual friend as well within the coaching space, and yeah, no, it's nice that you took a drive through Canada, even through the worst snowstorm of the year. But more things to push you out of your comfort zone, right? And this, hopefully, you don't get pushed off the road of the comfort zone. But yeah, no. Again, just really appreciate your time coming through and you getting to see kind of what my life is like.
Dude, this is awesome. Yeah, and I'll just call you AC because that's how I know you. Yeah, AC, I want to acknowledge you for like the deep like healing work that you've done within yourself to be able to be a clearing and be the space for other men and other high achievers to like, or people that are like workaholics to have a more well-balanced life, to be a man of his word, to be a man who is able to integrate play and work into your life. And yeah, it's just cool to see like people like yourself that are like unapologetically themselves. And I know that takes courage, that takes compassion, it takes taking risk. But yeah, man, I'm glad we were able to connect, and I think this is a lot of people resonate with what we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for seeing me first of all, and yeah, to me, it's like this is my life, right? So I live my life according to how I think my life should be lived, right? Like in order for me to be fulfilled. And if I can help along the way by helping other people, by leading by example, and because to me, it's like I think about future generations, I think about kids, I think about other fathers. So if I lead a dad's group, what do you think? Do you think it stops at those dads? It doesn't. Sharing content, creating content, talking about my mindset, talking about my story, it goes beyond just getting followers and subscribers. It goes to like helping generations of children. So you have to think that big, right? Even though you never know the impact that you have just doing small things, you never know that the impact that could possibly actually have on like even one person. Imagine like one of those subscribers, digest like a piece of content that you have, completely changes their life, completely changes the entire route of their entire ancestral line, all because they implemented a change that you put in, right? So like even though you have so many subscribers, it's important to think about quality of impact than over quantity of impact, because like it's actually, you never know whose life you're going to change.
So yeah, great reminder, man. Really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, no problem, dude.